As has been illustrated, the Bible states that Lucifer is nothing more than a fallen cherub. He's not a god. Yet Mr. Pike clearly states that Lucifer is a god. Now how can that be? And secondly, those who claim that he is the wicked one are slandering him. Those individuals have it all wrong. And Mr. Pike continued, quote, "The true and pure philosophic religion is the belief in Lucifer, the equal of Adonai," unquote. Adonai also spelled, well, in the first place here it's spelled A-D-O-N-A-Y, and he says Adonai, also spelled A-D-O-N-A-I, is the Hebrew word for God. To show that Pike was referring to the God of the Bible, he wrote this in his book entitled Morals and Dogma, quote, "Adonai, the rival of Baal and Osiris," unquote. In other words, Adonai is Typhon. That's an aside from me, folks. That's not written in this book. But as you've been listening to this series that I've given you, you know that Adonai, if this is true, if he is the rival of Baal and Osiris, then he is Typhon. As has been illustrated, Osiris is the sun god, and the sun has been shown to be a symbol of Lucifer. Adonai is the rival of Lucifer, both in the Bible and in the writings of Albert Pike. Quote, "But Lucifer, God of light and God of good, is struggling for humanity against Adonai, the God of darkness and evil," unquote. And here once again Mr. Pike writes that Lucifer and Adonai are rivals, and that the religious world has it all backwards. Lucifer is the good God, and Adonai is the God of evil and darkness. The author would like to interrupt the narrative to make an observation, and this observation is being made by A. Ralph Epperson, not me. He wrote this book. That authenticity of that letter by Albert Pike that was just quoted has been questioned by a variety of writers. It has been reported that Mr. Pike made these comments in an encyclical hand-carried to the meeting of 23 Supreme Councils of the World on July 14, 1889 in Paris, France. This author, meaning A. Ralph Epperson, is willing to concede that the only evidence for the contents of this encyclical consists of it being quoted in a book written by a Frenchman named A.C. de la Rive, entitled La Femme et l'Enfant dans la rank Mécanerie Universelle. I'm not a French speaker, folks, so that's the best I can do. My tongue doesn't do those things. Or at least I haven't practiced to make my tongue do those things. That title translated from French to English means The Woman and Child in Universal French Masonry. A copy of that page that contains that quote and the cover of the book has been supplied to this author, meaning A. Ralph Epperson, by a concerned researcher who had someone locate the book in France for him and make copies of the pertinent pages. The author has read another book that contains the English translation of that encyclical. That book is entitled Occult Theocracy and was written in 1933 by Edith Starr Miller. She cites the book by Mr. de la Rive as her source. She obviously believed that the letter was true and contained the actual thoughts of Mr. Albert Pike. He said it in so many other places, including in his own book, Morals and Dogma, that I also believe that the letter is true, and now I'm speaking as myself, William Cooper. In other words, going back to A. Ralph Epperson's words, in other words, the only source for the letter is a Frenchman who quotes it in his book and not Mr. Albert Pike himself. It must be assumed that Mr. Pike, if he were alive today and was asked whether the letter was his, would deny that he ever wrote such an encyclical, whether or not he had written it, because he must. He's sworn to maintain the secrets. But the reader is admonished to remember that if he did indeed worship Lucifer and wrote the encyclical, he would certainly have to deny it, so that answer would tell the researcher nothing. It is the contention of this writer, A. Ralph Epperson, and others who are attempting to decipher the secret symbols of the Masonic order, that a small percentage of the Masons know that all of the symbols inside the lodge refer to Lucifer. And I am one of those who believe this, folks. My research has shown it to be absolutely true, and I can prove it. And I've already given you direct quotes from many Freemasons that already prove it. And it must be remembered that these Masons must, of necessity, do all that they can to deny any revelation of any of the secrets of the lodge. And certainly anyone today who believes that the contents of the letter are a fraud would do all that they could to discredit anyone who said that the thoughts were the actual thoughts of Pike. However, this writer, meaning A. Ralph Epperson, is of the opinion that Mr. Pike did indeed worship Lucifer, and is not basing that conclusion on just this one letter. Notice that Mr. Pike has written elsewhere that he considered Lucifer to be the secret god of the Masonic Lodge, and I, William Cooper, have also found that to be true, not only in one or two, but in many instances. So it is not essential to this writer's, A. Ralph Epperson's, position that this encyclical be proven to be valid. It is the author's contention that there is ample evidence from other sources, including from Masons other than Mr. Pike, that the secret god inside the Masonic lodges is Lucifer, and I wholeheartedly concur with Mr. Epperson. That evidence is available to anyone who cares to locate it. But there is another Mason who knows that Lucifer is the good god of a particular segment of the Masons. Pike's fellow 33rd degree Mason, Manly P. Hall, also felt that this God was a God of good. He wrote in his book entitled The Secret Teachings of All Ages, quote, "Sun worship played an important part in nearly all the early pagan mysteries. The solar deity was slain by wicked ruffians who personified the evil principle of the universe. By means of certain rituals and ceremonies, symbolic of purification and regeneration, this wonderful God of good was brought back to life and became the savior of his people." Unquote. This God who came back to life is not the Jesus of the Bible, because Mr. Hall refers to him as the solar deity. He is referring to the death and resurrection of Osiris, covered in detail in the Masonic rituals, and I've already relayed to you who Osiris really is. In fact, in this series on the mystery religion, I've proven it time and time and time again. But Manly P. Hall has further identified Lucifer as the god of some of his fellow Masons. He has written this in his book entitled The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. It's one of the books that I gave you last night, folks. When the Mason, quote, "When the Mason learns the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo of the living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply energy." Unquote. Mikhail Bakunin, the Russian anarchist, also addressed this question of evil and good gods, and he wrote, quote, "The evil one is the satanic revolt against divine authority, revolt in which we see the fecund, defined as being fertile, germ of all human emancipations, the revolution. Socialists recognize each other by the words, 'In the name of the one to whom the great wrong has been done.' Satan, folks, is the eternal rebel, the first freethinker, and the emancipator of worlds. He makes men ashamed of his bestial ignorance and obedience. He emancipates him, stamps upon his brow the seal of liberty and humanity, in urging him to disobey and eat of the fruit of knowledge." Unquote. You see, I've been telling you all along that socialists and the mystery religion of Babylon are the same, and now, in his book, A. Ralph Epperson has proven it. That thought, that Lucifer was a good spirit to whom a great wrong was done, is the basic thought that holds the New Age together, according to Tex Mars, the author of 2 major books on the subject. And he has written, quote, "Many New Agers commend Lucifer because by tempting Eve he enabled man to evolve toward enlightened knowledge and godhood." Unquote. Remember I told you that with the gift of intellect, man will develop technology that will make him God? They are working feverishly in laboratories now to uncover the secret of immortal life. Mr. Mars discusses the thoughts of a leader in a mystical organization called the Stell Group. How many times have I mentioned that? The Stell Group. Named Eklal Koshana. He writes that this New Age leader says that, quote, "Lucifer is the head of a secret brotherhood of spirits. The brotherhood is named after Lucifer because the great angel Lucifer has been responsible for the abolishment of Eden in order that men could begin on the road to spiritual advancement." Unquote. Lars Hansen was reared in the Stell Group. Lars Hansen was reared in the Stell Group. Tom Valentine was a member of the Stell group. Tom Valentine wrote a book called The Life and Death of Planet Earth. Get it and read it, folks. Tom Valentine was associated with the Communist Party. Now he's a member of the Liberty Lobby, which came right out of the old German